My boyfriend broke up with me over red flags after listening to his best friend, then begged me to. So, I, 23 female, have been in a relationship with my boyfriend Eric, 24 male, for almost 8 months now. 8 months might not seem like a long time, but in Eric's world, it's practically a record. Most of his previous relationships barely lasted 3 or 4 months, and they were more like casual flings than anything serious. Naturally, I thought what we had was different, special even. I mean, 8 months together, that had to mean something, right? Well, a few days ago, I started questioning if I was wrong about that. A big part of the reason for my doubts is Eric's best friend, Olivia, 24, female. Olivia is not just any friend. She has been his neighbor for over 14 years. They met when they were 10 years old, grew up together, went to the same schools, and even ended up working at the same company. When I say best friend, I mean she is practically his second shadow. Eric does not make a single decision without consulting her first. And yes, that includes his decision to date me. Here's where things get a little weird. Eric confessed, about 4 months into our relationship, that Olivia had to approve every girl he dated. If she was not on board, the relationship was essentially doomed from the start. He told me this casually, like it was just some quirky little fact about him. Meanwhile, I was sitting there wondering what the hell I had gotten myself into. But by that point, I was already emotionally invested, so I stayed. Looking back, I know it was a bad decision. Had I known from the beginning about his borderline dependence on Olivia, I would have noped out of there so fast. As for Olivia and me, our relationship has been fine, I guess. Or at least it was until a few days ago. We have met a handful of times, and while we are always polite to each other on the surface, there is this undercurrent of tension I cannot ignore. It is like Olivia always has to subtly remind me that Eric is hers first. She does not say it outright, but her actions speak louder than words. Whenever the three of us are together, she has this way of making me feel excluded. It is not even overt. It is more like this passive-aggressive vibe she gives off. At first, I tried to be friends with her. I figured that since she is important to Eric, maybe we could all get along. But it became pretty clear that Olivia had no interest in being my friend. It felt like she had already made up her mind about me, and I was not going to change it. And maybe in some ways, I made it worse. I did not just try to befriend her, I also ended up competing with her for Eric's attention. That probably set the stage for what happened next. A few days ago, I got really sick. I live away from home for work, so I do not have family nearby to help out, and my roommate was on a trip. I was all alone, feeling miserable, and for once, I decided to lean on Eric. I called him and asked if he could come over to help me out. At first, he hesitated. I figured he was worried about catching whatever bug I had, so I reassured him that it was just a stomach thing and he would be fine. But even then, he seemed reluctant. I pressed him on why he was hesitating, and that is when he admitted that he had plans with Olivia. They were going to watch a movie and grab lunch. I was already feeling awful, and hearing that he prioritized her over me just added insult to injury. I had always known that Olivia came first in his life, but having it thrown in my face like that was a whole other level of hurt. In my frustration, I told him he could just go ahead and date Olivia, then hung up on him. I ignored all his calls after that, not because I wanted to play games, but because I was genuinely upset. To my surprise, about an hour later, he showed up at my apartment. He apologized for putting Olivia above me, canceled his plans with her, and even brought me homemade soup. Honestly, that gesture meant a lot. It showed me that maybe, just maybe, I mattered to him more than I thought. We spent the day together, and by the time he left that night, I was feeling a lot better, physically and emotionally. But I guess actions have consequences because the very next day, Eric completely ghosted me. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was like the previous day had not happened at all. I was in a complete panic because I truly believed something terrible had happened to him. I spent the entire day trying to get in touch with him, calling and texting repeatedly, but I could not get through. It felt like my heart was racing the whole time. Every hour that passed without a response made my anxiety worse. I kept imagining the worst-case scenarios, thinking he might be in trouble, hurt, or worse. Then finally, just as I was about to give up and try to sleep, he called me back at midnight, no less. When I answered, something immediately felt off. He sounded nothing like himself. His usual upbeat, playful tone was replaced with a serious, almost cold demeanor. He even sounded upset. After asking if I was feeling better, because ironically, I had been under the weather earlier that week, he said something that made my stomach drop. "You might want to sit down for this." That is never something you want to hear, and in this case, it was exactly as bad as it sounded. He then proceeded to break up with me over the phone. At first, I honestly thought it was a prank. I even laughed nervously, waiting for him to crack a smile or say something to reassure me, but he kept talking. He said it was not an easy decision for him and that it had taken a lot of thought to get to this point. Then he started explaining, or trying to explain, his reasoning. He told me that he had realized my behavior was full of red flags and that he could not see a future with me anymore. I was so blindsided that I could hardly comprehend what he was saying. Red flags? What red flags? I had always gone out of my way to be kind, supportive, and caring, both as a person and as his girlfriend. Nothing about what he was saying made sense. I was completely speechless, which is probably why I did not argue or try to change his mind. I just sat there holding my phone, listening to him say that he could not be with me anymore, and then, just like that, he hung up. It was over. I stared at my screen, numb with shock. My mind was racing to catch up, but no part of it made sense. Just the day before, we had spent time together, and everything had felt fine. Great, even. And now he was saying that my red flags were the problem? I spent the rest of the night crying until I eventually passed out. But the nightmare did not end there. When I woke up and tried to reach out to him for some kind of explanation, I realized he had blocked me on everything. His phone, social media, even email. There was no way to get in touch with him. No closure, no answers, nothing. I was devastated, not just because of the breakup itself, but because of how sudden and cruel it all felt. We had been together for quite a while, and he did not even have the decency to talk to me in person. I spent the next few days in a daze, replaying every interaction we had leading up to that moment, trying to figure out what I had done wrong. No matter how much I analyzed it, I came up with nothing. Then, out of nowhere last night, he called me. When I saw his name on my phone, I froze. I was not expecting to hear from him again, at least not so soon. I had barely begun to process the breakup, and suddenly there he was, throwing me off all over again. Against my better judgment, I answered. He started talking right away, apologizing profusely, sounding almost frantic. I did not even get a chance to say anything. His voice was shaky, almost hysterical, and I let him ramble because I was too stunned to do anything else. What he said next made my blood boil. Apparently, he had not wanted to break up with me at all. It was not his idea. No, the breakup was orchestrated by his friend Olivia, who had somehow convinced him that I was a walking red flag factory. According to him, she did not like the fact that he had canceled plans with her to spend time with me, and she had twisted that into proof that I was controlling and toxic. She had taken normal, everyday things I did, like cooking meals for him or buying him clothes I thought would suit him, and spun them into examples of me trying to manipulate and change him. And he had believed her. I could not believe what I was hearing. My boyfriend, the person I trusted, had let someone else plant these ridiculous ideas in his head and then acted on them without even talking to me first. He admitted that he had been stupid, that he had let Olivia get into his head, and that he deeply regretted it. He said he wanted to make things right, to get back together, and that he was willing to do anything to fix what he had broken. I sat there in silence, my hands gripping my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. All this time, I had been blaming myself, questioning everything about who I was, thinking I had ruined the relationship. But it was never about me. It was about Olivia and her petty, manipulative games, and about him being too spineless to see through them. My anger was so overwhelming that I could barely think straight. I told him I needed time to process everything and hung up. Now I am sitting here still fuming, wondering how I could ever trust him again. 4-0. I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, it's so obvious that she was never going to let me off the hook for stealing Eric right out from under her nose. I mean, that's how she must have seen it, right? The moment he chose to take care of me when I was sick instead of going through with his plans with her, I was officially her competition. And for Olivia, there was no such thing as friendly competition. She had to win. Always. And if winning meant breaking us up, then that's exactly what she was going to do. It all makes so much sense now, like every puzzle piece has finally fallen into place. I wish I'd seen it earlier, but hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? So there I was, sitting on the call with Eric, listening to him beg me to take him back. I could practically hear the desperation in his voice, and honestly, a part of me almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then he had the nerve, the absolute audacity, to bring her up again. Olivia. He was rambling on about how she wouldn't be a problem for us anymore because he'd just keep our relationship a secret from her. Like, what? Did he really think that was a solution? That hiding me like some dirty little secret was going to fix anything? I couldn't believe it. Even after everything she had done, after she'd clearly been manipulating him and controlling every aspect of his life, he still couldn't see her for what she really was. A toxic, conniving puppet master pulling his strings. But honestly, That was his problem, not mine. I wasn't about to waste my energy trying to convince him of something he should have figured out for himself. And anyway, it wasn't just Olivia that was the issue, it was him. The fact that he let her have that much power over him, the fact that he let her words end our relationship without even thinking for himself. That was the real problem. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could he not see the red flags practically smacking him in the face? How could he still prioritize her feelings over mine even now? The fact that he was okay with hiding our relationship to maintain his so-called friendship with her was all I needed to know. If that wasn't a giant neon sign telling me to run in the opposite direction, I don't know what was. So yeah, I had already made up my mind. There was no way I was getting back together with him. The second he told me the real reason for our breakup, I was done. I'd cried enough tears over this guy, and honestly, he didn't deserve even one of them. But here's the thing, I couldn't just let it go, not without making sure Olivia knew that she hadn't won, that she couldn't just steamroll over me and walk away unscathed. Call it petty, call it manipulative, call it whatever you want, but I felt like I had to do something, so I came up with a plan. It wasn't my proudest moment, I'll admit that, but it felt necessary at the time. I told Eric that I would consider taking him back, but only on one condition. He had to confront Olivia. He had to tell her straight up that she wasn't the boss of him and that he was choosing me over her. I wanted him to put her in her place, to show her that she didn't have the power she thought she did. When I told Eric my condition, his reaction was almost laughable. He was stunned, like he couldn't believe I would ask him to do something so extreme. He started pleading with me, saying it was unnecessary and asking me to reconsider. But I didn't budge. I told him that if he wanted me back, this was the only way. No compromises. Either he sent her those texts or we were done for good. He tried arguing with me for a while, but eventually he caved. He sent her exactly what I told him to, and he even sent me a screenshot to prove it. As soon as I saw the message, I knew I'd gotten what I wanted. And with that, I hung up on him and blocked his number. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it mean? Probably. Do I regret it? Not really. After everything I went through because of him and because of her, I felt like I deserved this small victory. Maybe it wasn't the most mature thing to do, but hey, I never claimed to be perfect. So yeah, now I'm wondering, am I the asshole for making Eric send Olivia those texts, knowing full well I was never gonna take him back? Update 1. So, it's been 2 days since I last heard from Eric. Not a single text, call, or even a random scene on my stories. Honestly, I expected something, anything from him by now, but nope, radio silence. Olivia hasn't been able to contact me either because, well, I blocked her too. And let's be real, blocking her was probably the easiest decision I've made in weeks. I'm not about to let her invade my space again, especially after everything. At first, I'll admit, I felt a little guilty about what I made Eric do. It's not like it's in my nature to manipulate people, and yeah, lying to him about getting back together just to get my point across wasn't exactly my proudest moment. But then I took a deep breath, scrolled through the responses here, and let myself really sit with it. And you know what? I realized I don't actually owe him my guilt. Eric is a grown adult. He made a choice. He sent Olivia those texts because he wanted to. Not because I twisted his arm or put him in a no-win situation, but because deep down, he didn't want to be with her anymore. That was his decision, not mine. Yes, I lied. I'll own that. But let's not pretend Eric didn't mess with my head first. He had me believing I was the problem in our relationship, like I was the one bringing all the toxicity to the table, when in reality, he was out there taking advice from his so-called best friend Olivia without a second thought about how it would affect me. Or frankly, how it would affect him. It's like he was living in some alternate reality where his actions didn't have consequences, and I was just supposed to go along with it. He'll never know how awful those days were for me after we broke up. I was stuck in this endless loop of self-doubt, overanalyzing every single thing I said or did, wondering what the hell went wrong. It was exhausting. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every time I thought I had an answer, I'd find another layer of confusion to unpack. So, excuse me if I don't feel particularly bad about what I did. Anyway, I haven't told anyone we broke up yet. I've just been putting it off. Partly because I don't feel like explaining myself, and partly because I don't know what to say. Like, how do you even begin to tell people that the relationship they thought was perfect from the outside was actually a complete train wreck? But I can't keep stalling forever. One of my friends invited both Eric and me to her birthday party, and obviously I'm going solo now. When I show up without him, people are going to ask questions. I can already hear the awkward, well-meaning comments, "Where's Eric? You two were so cute together." And I have no clue what I'm going to say. Maybe I'll go with something vague like, We just weren't right for each other, or it wasn't working anymore. But honestly, that feels so fake. It's not like I can blurt out the full story without turning the party into a soap opera. I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. For now, I'm just focusing on the fact that I'm done with him and everything he brought into my life. It feels like a weight's been lifted off my chest. Sure, there's still some cleanup to do, but at least I'm finally free. That has to count for something, right? Update 2. It has been almost a week since I broke up with Eric, and I honestly thought that blocking both him and his so-called best friend Olivia would mean cutting off all contact forever. I mean, isn't that the point of blocking people? Out of sight, out of mind, right? Well, apparently, I was way too optimistic because, as it turns out, some people just cannot stay away. So, this morning, my phone rang and the call came from a number I did not recognize. Like any normal person who avoids unknown callers, I let it go to voicemail. No big deal, right? But then they called again. This time, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. Big mistake. The person on the other end? Olivia. Yes, that Olivia. The one person I have absolutely no interest in ever talking to again. The moment I heard her voice, I was ready to hang up. I mean, what good could possibly come out of that conversation? But then she hit me with some ridiculous reverse psychology, saying that if I hung up, it would only prove that I was a coward who could not handle confronting her. And listen, I know I should have let it roll off my back and hung up anyway, but I didn't. It got to me. So, against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. What followed was a total train wreck. Olivia launched into this full-blown tirade, calling me every name in the book and acting like she had been waiting her entire life for this moment. She called me a sneaky little liar and went on about how glad she was that Eric and I had broken up because, according to her, he was way too good for me. Then she dropped the big one. She called me the B word. That was it. That was the moment I officially lost my patience. I completely snapped and told her exactly what I thought of her. I let her know that she was nothing more than a pathetic backup plan for Eric, a consolation prize he kept around just in case things did not work out with someone else. I told her that she would probably spend her entire life chasing off other girls so she could have him all to herself, and honestly, it was just sad. And guess what? It hit a nerve. Hard. The second I said it, I could hear her voice start to shake. She was fumbling for a comeback, but nothing came out. She sounded like she was about to cry, and let me tell you, I was not about to back down. So I pushed even further. I reminded her that no matter how much she screamed at me, the truth was the truth. The other night, Eric had the choice not to send those texts to her. He could have ignored her, but he didn't. And you know what? He chose me. Not her, me. That was the final straw for Olivia. I heard her burst into tears on the other end of the call. And do you think I felt bad for her? Absolutely not. She was the one who called me to try and make me feel awful about myself, and now here she was, crying like a child who lost a toy. The irony was not lost on me. I have no idea if Olivia and Eric are even on speaking terms right now. Honestly, I do not care. But a small, petty part of me hopes she goes running to him to complain about what I said. Let them both come for me again if they want. I am more than ready to put them in their place once and for all. They need to learn that I am not someone they can mess with and then walk away like nothing happened. Here's the thing. If you are comfortable being cruel to others, then you better be prepared to take it when someone dishes it back. People like Olivia and Eric think they have a free pass to hurt others without any consequences, but not with me. Not anymore. Update 3. Hey everyone, so here's what happened after my last post. 2 days ago, I got a call from Olivia, and let's just say it ended in a way that did not go well for her. I had mentioned before that I was hoping Eric would finally confront me about everything because honestly, I was more than ready to tell both of them off. And guess what? That moment finally came today. The whole thing started when a mutual friend of ours, who had introduced Eric and me in the first place, threw a party. She didn't know Eric and I had broken up, so she invited both of us. Naturally, I knew there was a high chance of some drama brewing, but I went anyway because it was her birthday, and I didn't want to let this mess ruin her big day. An hour into the party, Eric walked in. And guess who was clinging to his arm? Olivia. The two of them looked like they were on a mission to pick a fight. I immediately pulled my friend aside to explain the situation and even offered to leave early if things escalated. I didn't want to ruin her birthday by causing a scene. It's just not the kind of person I am. But instead of being upset or concerned, she laughed and told me to stay. Apparently, she was very curious to see the drama unfold in person after everything I had told her. At first, I avoided both Eric and Olivia like the plague. I figured if anyone was going to start something, it would have to be them. I wasn't about to stoop to their level, at least not right away. But if they came for me, I was more than ready to show them their place. And as expected, it didn't take long. About 30 minutes after they arrived, Eric made his move. I was casually chatting with another guy, not even flirting, just having a friendly conversation, when Eric stormed over. He loudly made some passive-aggressive remark about how I seemed to have moved on so quickly. Of course, everyone around us went silent, all eyes on the three of us. He then accused me of being a cheater and a liar, trying to humiliate me in front of the entire party. And there Olivia was, standing behind him with this smug, nasty grin on her face. I swear, I wanted to wipe that expression off her face. But I managed to hold back. Eric kept going, bringing up the phone call from a few days ago. He even tried to claim that I was the backup, saying I wasn't even worth dating in the first place. That was the last straw for me. I laughed, right in his face. Because let's be real, if I remember correctly, it was Eric who came crawling back to me after dumping me for Olivia, only to realize she wasn't all that he thought she was. I decided it was time to set the record straight for everyone to hear. I calmly told Eric that both he and Olivia were way out of their league when it came to me. He should have considered himself lucky that I even gave him a chance in the first place, because quite frankly, he was nothing more than a spineless puppet that Olivia controlled. I told him no other woman would ever want him because he lacked the backbone to stand on his own 2 feet. And Olivia? Well, she was just sad and insecure, desperate enough to try and break us up by any means necessary, even using a fake phone number to contact me. By the time I finished, the room was dead silent. Eric was glaring at me, speechless, and Olivia, unable to come up with a real comeback, resorted to hurling expletives at me. She got all up in my personal space, clearly trying to provoke me into hitting her, but I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. I just stood there, letting her unravel while everyone watched. Eventually, Eric had to physically drag her away because she was having a full-blown meltdown. As they left, the whole room burst out laughing. My friend came over, gave me a big hug, and told me I was a total badass. The rest of the night went off without a hitch. We drank, danced, and had a fantastic dinner to celebrate her birthday. I feel so much better now. I got the closure I needed and showed them both that their sad attempts to humiliate me only ended up backfiring. Honestly, I hope they stay together because no one else deserves to deal with their mess.
Update 4. Hey everyone, here's the latest tea.
Okay, so here's a quick but juicy update for you all because life just keeps serving the unexpected. Brace yourselves. Olivia and Eric are officially in a relationship now. Yes, you heard that right, folks. Olivia and Eric. Can you even believe it? Honestly, I am still laughing about it because, well, didn't I literally call this? It's been 3 months since that chaotic party showdown where they both lost their minds, and I guess somewhere along the way, they decided I was right after all. I mean, let's be real. No one else in their right mind would deal with either of them individually, so why not just combine forces and torture each other instead? It's poetic in a way, and the news came to me secondhand, of course. I'm not exactly keeping tabs on them anymore, thank goodness. A friend of a friend mentioned it during a casual conversation, and honestly, it just felt like the universe tying up some loose ends. I wish them well, I guess. Or at least I wish their eventual couples therapist well. That person's gonna have a lot on their hands. As for me, I've moved on in every possible way. I've started seeing this new guy, and let me tell you, he's basically my type to a T. Sweet, funny, good communicator. You know, all the stuff that seems basic but is somehow so rare. Fingers crossed, this one doesn't have some secret toxic best friend lurking in the wings, ready to ambush me with their drama when I least expect it. I think I deserve a break after all this nonsense, don't you? Anyway, that's the update. Life's weird, people are weird, but at least I've got a good story to tell. Thanks for sticking with me through this roller coaster. Who knows what's next?